I went from being depressed with over $10,000 in debt to buying my very own Lamborghini Aventador S before the age of 30. And I'm going to reveal to you the single biggest thing I did right to get here and how you can do it too and achieve your dreams much faster. Now, I'm not the only one who knows this secret to success. You see these two guys here? They understand that this is the one thing you must get right in order to succeed better than almost anyone. Which is why last year their company made $650 million in profit. And the year before that, they made $850 million in profit. Now, the problem is there's endless amounts of content on every angle of building an online business. Like how to set up your ad structure, how to shoot high converting ads, how to improve your website's conversion rate, or what oversaturated product should you be selling just at this exact moment on TikTok. But what if I told you there's actually really only one thing that really separates you from all these millionaires, including me, that you see online talking about how they made this kind of money or this kind of money or how they made this kind of money. Now, I know you must be thinking, who the hell is this guy? But believe me, I learned this the hard way. I remember very well locking myself into my apartment and deciding I'm not leaving here until I get a business off the ground and that starts making money. And the depression and anxiety that came from the isolation and grinding for over 4 years, getting myself over $10,000 in debt with nothing to show for it after 4 years of struggle. And literally everyone around me thinking I'm crazy and that I've ruined my life by dropping out of high school to pursue this. And I remember so well looking at all these success stories and people quote unquote making it around me. And I used to think there has to be something special about them that I didn't have. And that's what makes them so successful. But trust me, now after 15 years of doing this stuff, I know there isn't. I even now have friends from high school tell me that they're inspired by the fact that, okay, if Robin can succeed with this, then it really must mean that anybody can do it, which I happen to take as a compliment, so. But either way, I stuck with it and eventually got my first business off the ground, and over time, I've been lucky enough to have a couple different businesses making me personally hundreds of thousands a year in profit. With the latest one being Long Baton, my e-commerce brand that has sold close to $10 million worth of products in the last 5 years, with our best year so far netting me personally a little under $1 million in profit. Now, I'm not saying this to brag, and there's plenty of people out there who've made so much more money than me, but why would you listen to me if I haven't actually built a profitable business before? And more than once, by the way. And not only that, I've seen countless friends succeed and make millions, even tens of millions of dollars in profit online, and by now I'd be a fool not to pick up on what makes some people so much more successful than others. Now, the guys I mentioned in the beginning I think perfectly illustrate why this approach is so powerful. This was a few years ago, but back in Finland where I grew up, there's a big online gaming industry, and there was a couple of guys who had already done well for themselves running a decent sized gaming company that made all kinds of mobile games for Nokias and other phones. And for all you kids out there, Nokia was what us boomers all had before the iPhone took over. And I'm 32, by the way, don't let the baby face fool you. But when these guys went off to create a whole new mobile gaming company in 2010, just as smartphones were becoming more and more popular, these guys weren't first-time entrepreneurs anymore. They knew exactly what the one secret sauce to success was, and they had every intention of exploiting it. So what happened was, they put together a team of game developers and made their first game, which peaked at around 500,000 monthly players. Now, for most people, especially brand new startups, this would be amazing results. I mean, life-changing results. But remember, these guys already had money. They weren't in a big hurry to try and make a quick buck with a game that does decently well. So, and this is the real ballsy move, which in my opinion is what really sets these guys apart from everyone else, they killed that game. And they basically killed a cash cow that most people would think is the best thing that ever happened to them. Just in order for them to get that same team who created that cash cow to go back to the drawing board and work on building something that could not only just do well, but actually be a mega freaking hit. And lo and behold, what did they come up with? A game you might have heard of called Clash of Clans. And within a year, they're bringing in $2.5 million a day in revenue. Fast forward to today, and last year they made $650 million in profit. And the year before that, $850 million in profit. And this is like 10 years later. So you see, these guys, they were patient enough and they knew well enough already not to just waste their time on anything else except something that could be a massive hit. Literally nothing else would do. And even if they made something that did well, it wasn't worth their time. Either it's a proper hit or it goes in the trash. So if what these guys showed us is not a sign that you too should be spending the bulk of your time hit mining, by the way, that's the term I'm trying to coin for this, hit mining, don't settle for average. All right, that was kind of dumb. Whatever. If that's not a sign that you should be doing exactly what these guys were doing and actively just poking around till you find your own hit, also known as product market fit, by the way, then I don't know what is. Now you might think, oh, that's it? I'm just gonna be lucky enough and land on a mega hit? Yeah, pretty much it. That's it. Video's over. No, of course not. It's not that simple. There's actually way more to it. Because actually, I'd argue that almost everybody around you, including probably me, is right now wasting their time, and I'd even go as far as to say their entire careers, working on and improving on and tinkering on things that are not just big enough hits. But luckily, there's actually 4 really good rules I've found that if you follow these 4 rules, you can avoid this happening to you. And I'll explain exactly what they are, as well as how I'm actively using and applying these in my current businesses as well. So since my expertise is in e-commerce, I'll focus on that niche, but this really applies to anything. Software, music, TV production, you name it. And you know, I actually discussed this with a friend of mine who's had several hits and his brands have sold over $500 million worth of products. And he estimated that something like 1 out of every 20 new e-commerce ventures will be a hit. And that's if you know what you're doing. For a complete beginner, the odds are likely way worse. So finding a hit is way easier said than done. I mean, if it was so easy, literally everyone around you would be rich. But this still doesn't mean that you're never gonna find your hit. It just means that you need to be very selective about what you're working on, and to make sure that you know these 4 things I'm about to explain that will help you cut through that BS and get you to your own hit faster. And as a quick note here before I reveal what they are, let's accept that both you and me, we both have a very skewed view of what makes some things so successful and others not so much. Because we have such a massive survivorship bias out there. No one literally ever talks about the giant iceberg of failed stores or businesses that are hiding right underneath the surface. And this applies not to just business, by the way, it's everywhere. Think about the music industry, for example. You only ever see the tiny tip of the iceberg of all the music that's being made out there, because only the hits ever make it to your ears or to the Billboard lists. Or even on YouTube, there's 3.7 million new videos being uploaded every single day. Now think about how insanely few of those that the algorithm will ever recommend to you. But that's just how the world is. And the sooner you start seeing the world like that, the better you'll do. Now, David Fogarty, if you ever see this, I hope you don't mind too much that I use your businesses as an example, but I think there's just such a great lesson here. So apparently they launched calming blankets in 2018, which seems to have done really well at first, but then started struggling, losing over $1 million in a year, which is super common in D2C e-commerce. But right after that, they launched the Uri, which has gone on to sell $400 million, probably $500 million by now, and has been just a monstrous hit. But did you know that they have at least 8 other brands, one of which they managed to scale to over $1 million a month in sales at one point, which is also just crazy impressive numbers. But out of all these brands, why does the Uri absolutely dwarf the others? It's not like they did a bad job with the other 2 there. Can't they just take whatever worked really well for the Uri and simply apply that to grow all the other brands and get the same results? Well, they can try, and they almost certainly did, but the thing is, one is simply just a way bigger hit and a heck of a lot more scalable than the others. It's as simple as that. You don't think they've tried to increase ad spend to the same level on all the other brands? I can guarantee you they have. But at some point, the CPAs like just got way too high, or word of mouth from the customers acquired wasn't as strong. Maybe the market size is smaller, maybe the competition is much more fierce, or maybe the timing wasn't as good. There can be a million reasons. But at the end of the day, some hits are bigger, some are smaller. That's just how the world works. So the way I look at this is, and the way I think you should look at this too, is if we take my store here, for example, do you see all these bells and whistles? Our large selection of different colors and collections, our branding, our upsells, our cross-sells everywhere, our customer loyalty program, or our complicated email flows, everything. That's all just built around an original hit. And that's exactly how I think you should look at it. So the obvious solution, and therefore rule number 1, is if you don't have a hit yet, focus all of your efforts on testing it if an idea is a hit, and only then do you start adding bells and whistles. The less time and money you can spend per actual good swing of your bat, I'll break down what makes a good swing, but the more of these swings you can get, the bigger you can succeed, because you'll increase your chances of landing on a huge hit. Now don't make it too fancy. Don't spend too much time making the perfect store or the perfect brand or the perfect Facebook or TikTok ad. You just need a super simple Shopify store, add maybe 1 set of bundles to get that AOV up, but even that's not 100% necessary. Then you get a handful of simple UGC videos talking about how awesome it is, and that'll almost certainly be enough to just validate your idea. I had none of these things you see on our store now when I found my hit. It was ugly, the pictures sucked, the site was slow, and just altogether the whole thing was as scrappy as you could ever imagine. But it was immensely profitable from day one, and our biggest problem was not how to get more customers, it was how do we serve all this demand. Now, I know it's hard to remember now, but when Gymshark started, their product category wasn't anywhere near as popular or as obvious as it is today. And although they didn't come up with the idea, it was still relatively new at the time. And if you listen to what happened when they took their clothes to their first smaller gym goers convention in London, the response was literally insane.
The second the doors opened, we were flooded. I have never seen so many people just draw into a stand at once. Ever. It was absolutely incredible. It was unmanageable. It
was without even the slightest doubt that they had landed on an enormous hit. Same goes for the Uri that we mentioned earlier. I think it's such a great example because if you don't know the story here, what happened was that the inventors went on Shark Tank with the product idea of combining a super cuddly and super soft blanket with an oversized sweater. Then Barbara invested, and as soon as the Shark Tank episode aired, they must have known it was a hit. Just their first year in business, they did $20 million in sales, and it went on to become one of the better investments in the history of the Shark Tank. Now for context, here's what it looks like when a non-hit product's Shark Tank episode airs.
The first night it aired, I sold 1 style system after the anticipation had been built up for months and months and months. That was very hard emotionally. I think I got depressed for probably a few days.
And as is common with big hits, this was a hit from the start for those who came up with it, but also for several quick-to-react, quote-unquote knockoffs from around the world, such as the Uri, who then made it even bigger and better than the original Comfy. Now, a good thing to note here though is that once you have a hit, this alone won't carry you through the years. Over time, that original hit fades and competition enters the market, and the cost to acquire a new customer for that same hit just goes up and up and up. So to keep growing, a brilliant thing that Davy's team did with the Udi was to expand on that hit to get an almost endless supply of high converting product launches by going out and making licensed Udis in partnership with existing brands. So now you can buy a Pokemon Udi or a Frozen Udi or a Rick and Morty Udi or a Harry Potter Udi and so on and so on. This way you can target fans of those brands and sell them Udis that are plastered all over with their favorite characters. Brilliant way to capitalize on a big hit, but it requires landing on that first initial hit still. So let's examine a few examples of e-commerce hits or swings of the bat, which I know to have done well. Sex chocolate. You and your partner split this chocolate and you both instantly get into the mood and have better, got it. A watch strap that transforms your ugly wrist computer Apple Watch into a luxury watch like your Rolex or your Cartier. Got it. A soft and cuddly oversized Rick and Morty sweater that's been combined with a warm blanket. It's trendy as fuck. Or how about a protective case for your iPhone that you can fully customize the look of? This was Casetify's original hit, and last year they made $300 million in sales. Or the final example, trendy gym clothes made specifically for real gym rats, not just for athletes in general. And what do these all have in common? Well, one thing is that they're all really easy to explain to someone in one simple sentence or in like a quick elevator pitch. And that's rule number 2. Because often with a lot of the bigger hits, when you see it for the first time, when your customer base sees it or hears it for the first time, they instantly get it and they know exactly why they want it. And this is what you're looking for in your hit. So what do you think would happen if you were to build this insanely revolutionary product? You worked on it for years and years, you've spent over $1 billion to create it, and now finally you go to launch it today at the end of 2023. If that product happens to be a world-changing AI chatbot, stupid. If that product happens to be a world-changing AI chatbot based on your own insanely massive large language model, I'm willing to bet you'd likely not even break the news barrier anymore. While in contrast, less than a year ago, that same exact product named ChatGPT set the record for the fastest growing user base in history with 100 million active users within 2 months of launch. And this is also why I'm not worried when talking about my own brand Long But On so openly. I mean, what if someone here sees it and then they start competing with us or selling watch bands online? Well, the answer is because I know that by now, the only reason we're still making money 5.5 years later, even though tons of competition has entered the space and CPAs have skyrocketed, is that we've built a brand and customer base that we can continue designing and selling new product launches to. The ship I jumped on has sailed. And the best way I've found to remember this role by is using the words of Peter Thiel. Now, if you don't know him, he's the billionaire co-founder of PayPal, founder of $30+ billion market cap company Palantir, and an early investor in Facebook. And literally, the opening statement of his book 0 to 1 starts with these words. Every moment in business happens only once. The next Bill Gates will not build an operating system. The next Larry Page or Sergey Brin won't make a search engine. And the next Mark Zuckerberg won't create a social network. If you're copying these guys, you're not learning from them. So now that I know all this, I still need to ask myself, am I just wasting my time on too small of a hit? Or how do I even know if I'm wasting my time slugging away at something that's never going to take off while something else I'm capable of creating could be? Well, first of all, before anything else, I ask myself, as I learned from Warren Buffett, is time on my side? And I mean now on a big macro level. And if we use my software company AdBright, which is the ad tracking software that we're working on as an example, is online privacy heading in a direction that tracking where your online sales are actually coming from is going to continue to become more and more difficult for businesses over time? I think the answer is yes. So that's a check. I can continue. Now let's look at the elevator pitch for AdBright's first swing of the bat. Since I have a lot of insight from the industry, especially as a brand owner myself, my hypothesis was this: that people might flock to a software that helps them accurately track their sales in their Facebook Ads Manager if it's an order of magnitude cheaper than all the other overpriced trackers that are out there. Because that's what really bothered me. And you know what happened? I tested my idea by spending as little time and money as I could while still giving it a proper swing. And I can now tell that it adds some value and it resonates with some people, and over time it maybe could be a good little SaaS business, but in its current form, it's not that kind of a mega hit that would just take off like a rocket ship and everyone's raving about it to their friends in the industry. And what we do next is, I think, what will make the biggest difference to our company's outcome. We don't settle before it's a hit. This doesn't mean we give up though, quite the contrary. We just ditch or push our long to-do list of smaller incremental improvements that a lot of our early customers have now started asking for. And instead we pick a new, bigger swing of the bat to start working on and focus all of our efforts on seeing if that would be our hit. And if not, we swing again. And personally, I don't take this as a quote-unquote failure at all, and neither should you. So don't be afraid to kill it, or at minimum pivot or focus your efforts on something that could be a real hit. You must learn from what these two guys did, because nobody has any fucking clue what exactly will take off and how fast. The most successful people I know, they just learned a few key characteristics that's common among big hits, and then they kept on swinging until they landed that one swing which turned out to be their home run.